And good afternoon, everybody. My name is Randy Pallotta. I know quite a few of you out there, but welcome to the Productivity for Interface Engineers session. And before I talk your ears off for quite a while, I am joined, rare for me, but I have a counterpart for this presentation. And so I'd like to introduce Steve.
So I'm Steve Schenks from Ascension Technologies. Randy told me I could have 2 minutes for an introduction. I know Randy, that means really 30 seconds. Joke's on him, I'm going to take 10 minutes.
Excellent.
But I just want to set the playing field here for a little bit, and some crazy numbers and some things. So Ascension is the nation's largest nonprofit healthcare system, the world's largest Catholic healthcare system. We have 2,600 sites of care. We're in 21 states and the District of Columbia, 151 hospitals. And so that kind of sets us up for anytime we do something, it's on a massive scale. So the next piece is we have 11 different integration platforms across Ascension. What we've done with InterSystems now, we're trying to bring all those things onto one platform, all doing the same thing, same sets of standards and all those things, a ton of work. And on those 11 platforms, we have approximately 8,500 interfaces that we're trying to get off of the legacy onto the InterSystems application. So what that does is sets us up for a huge project, months, if not years, to do. So what we had to do is look for some places that we could gain some productivity. Now you might think, 30 seconds here or 30 seconds there is not a big deal, but take that on a repeatable basis where those 30 seconds add up to minutes, multiply that out times 8,500, and over the life of the project, we're hoping to not just save, some days, but at the end of it, if the math works out, we're working at, weeks and months of productivity savings, which, the bottom line and the management likes to know that's going to save some money over the course of this. So that's what we're really looking for. So Randy's going to walk us through some of those new features, some places that we saw where we could gain some of that productivity back, make it a little easier on our developers to do their daily job, and to make that repeatable process and get us a little more streamlined.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Steve. And we'll be hearing from Steve in a little bit once we introduce some of these new features. I certainly can't top that introduction, but for those I haven't met yet, Randy Pallotta here. We got all sorts of customers doing all sorts of things under this roof at Global Summit, but many or most of you are part of our client base, which is near and dear to my heart, which are the folks that use Health Connect, formerly Ensemble, as an integration engine, and even many of you primarily as an HL7 integration engine. I've been working with that client base for my entire career at InterSystems. I started out on our support desk, moved into sales engineering, and a couple years ago, they even allowed me to manage the sales engineering team. And along the way, I've mentored dozens of customers now through projects just like what Steve described, where we replace legacy engines, everything from homegrown solutions to commercial off-the-shelf products of every shape and size. We've learned quite a bit through the years, but then as Steve said, the project and the magnitude of the project that Ascension has taken on with us gave us cause to take a look at the engine and see what we can make more efficient. And so, what I'm happy to say is all of these features that you'll be seeing today, they were alpha'd and are currently being alpha'd in different states with Ascension, but they're all going to be available to our entire client base. That was one of the gauntlets for each of these new features that I'll be showing you as we discussed it with our alpha partner Ascension. We wanted to make sure that every one of these means something, particularly to the folks that use us as an enterprise-grade HL7 engine solution. Since we continue to have great success in this market, an emphasis on this area of the product, it was an easy decision for us to make. And as Steve said, a lot of this is around productivity increases when we're initially migrating interfaces to Health Connect, but I would also say a lot of these features make your life easier post-go live, and I think you'll see that in a bit. So a very simple agenda here, really only 3 chapters to the presentation today. We're going to take a look at some general productivity tools that we think benefit you from day 1 to day end. Then we're going to hear some feedback from Steve and the Ascension folks. And then we're going to show you, what the future holds with regards to this type of functionality in terms of actually automating a great deal of the interface conversion process. So with that, we're going to go ahead and we're just going to start rolling here and showing you new stuff. I know a lot of you out there, there's also a fair amount of new faces. Just show of hands, who here, as part of their day-to-day life, stands up HL7 interfaces using Health Connect? Okay, good, most of the room. Also, and we'll kick this off with the first feature here, of that group, how many of you from time to time have to update or modify an HL7 schema or create a new one? Yep. How many of you that raise your hand wake up every morning with a burning desire to count tildes and squiggly brackets? And yeah, that's what I figured. So in the interest of a strong opening number for the musician in me, I'd like to introduce the visual HL7 schema editor, okay? The future is now for InterSystems and for Health Connect. And so yes, it is as described, a drag and drop web-based utility, and I'm going to be demoing quite a few of these features as we go. This one came about, and this one was inspired by none other than Steve himself, who at the end of our initial meetings with Ascension said, boy, you got a strong product. If there's one area I'd like to see it drastically improve, it's your HL7 schema editor. And so Nikolai, who's in the room here, put together a prototype. Thanks, Nikolai. And then Kim, who's in the back there, took that and made it production grade. And what you see now, when you come in and you're creating a new schema or modifying an existing one, you get there the same way. And if we want to modify the ADT, we have a whole different look and feel here. Okay? So this is the web-based HL7 Visual Schema Editor. Has a lot of nice bells and whistles. If on the left-hand side, it looks and feels like our data transformation editor, so a lot of comfort there, and obviously a short learning curve, as it should be. If I go ahead and click Edit to give you a feel for this, on the left-hand side, I can see all available segments. I can have it show only Z segments, which is a nice little toggle there. Right from here, I could create a new segment if I needed to define one on the fly. But really, I think where we start removing the need for counting tildes is when we look at the drag and drop capabilities. So as I bring it over certain places in the message, it'll expand out groups if it's a group, and just by dropping it in, there we go. I can click on it, I can make it optional, I can make it repeating, do the things that I want to do. Now for those who like, and I'll go ahead and save that, for those who are really into the vintage style here, we can go back. And if you really, truly do like to count the tildes and things like that, don't worry, we're not going to leave you behind. But I certainly expect that in very short order, we're going to see rapid adoption of this new piece of the product. And ultimately, yes, it does make you faster, but I think more importantly, it reduces the chance of error, especially when we're updating an existing schema. So we figured we'd start out with that, and believe me, that's just the first of many we're going to get into here. So, where do we spend most of our time as interface analysts? Well, in the data transformation editor tool is what I would guess. Again, when converting from an engine or bringing on new interfaces, this is where the science and the art of interfacing intersect, is those data transformations. And while we could certainly talk all day and night about how great of specifications we get and how fun it is reverse engineering, things like that. To give you an idea of what some of the new features are, we've added case statements. We've added a group element, which I'll show you. That may be a nice unexpected surprise for some of you. Comment actions, and then also copy and paste right in the web-based browser. And I will say, much like many of our enterprise sites, another focus here for Ascension, and especially when we get to the large sites, multi-tenant environments where we're supporting 100 different sites, 100 plus, or even 10 or 12, we have a big focus now to keep people in the browser. and keep them off of the server. And so for many of you that have been with us for a long time, even something like copy and paste, it requires you to go out to Studio. And we're looking to alleviate those hops out. And so what we see here, in this case, is an HL7, a flat file transformation. And it could be really anything. The first thing I'll highlight is if I hit the Add Action dropdown, now we see we have case and switch statements, and we have a group element, which is something new. The comment action will be coming soon. And there goes my VPN. That's all right. Don't need that. But let's start by talking about the group action. Many of you, by show of hand, use this product as an HL7 engine every day. When that pager goes off and it's 2 a.m. and you got to figure out what's happening in the ORC segment, you got to describe that to somebody or see it for yourself, and you got 400 lines of transformation logic, now we're able to group things up. And if you'll notice the line number on the left, we see that the FT1 segment logic actually goes about 40 lines deep, but we're able to collapse everything down. And so if I go right to the ORC group, and you give it a name, something that makes sense to you, I can go ahead and expand that, and I can rapidly find the information I'm looking for, okay? If I'm building a transformation, and you guys know this day in and day out, I've got an if statement. If it's true, do these 20 things. If it's false, do 16 of those things. Instead of having to rewrite every single time each of those actions, now what I can do is highlight a group, hit this copy action, and come in and paste it all right in. And that would work within, for instance, the false branch of an if statement. So huge productivity increase. For those of you that do this every day, you know now you don't have to redrag the same 16 lines or whatever it may be, only to come in and tweak a couple of little pieces there. In addition, if I open up the FT1 segment processing, you'll see here that we have, if I expand the for each, we have case statements now. Now, we could always do these. We could use code blocks to do them. But as Steve said, when you got 8,800 interfaces or even 800 interfaces to convert, every efficiency matters, and this stuff adds up. And so, case statements are in there. And like I said, common statements will be in as well. What this makes for, and I think at Ascension they found another nice use for the group, which is to include a version history right there at the top of the data transformation, where we can see, over time who's changed what. So for the folks that maybe don't use a third-party source control system and want a better, more robust way to track the version comments, this is another nice use. And so, I think, and we'll see a couple other data transformation improvements in a little bit, but again, for those of you that use this product every day, I'm certain these features are going to be welcome. And by the way, I should mention, all of this stuff, until I tell you otherwise, is going to be available in the 2019.1 release of our integration solutions that are, of course, all based on Iris. So moving along, if we pop back into the presentation, the next thing near and dear to us is testing routing rules. Again, a lot of you do this every day, and while the process works and it gets you the information you need, one of the things that we heard, not just from Ascension but other customers, boy, it sure would be nice to be able to test routing rules without having to go back and run a bunch of messages through. Go drop a file in, let it go through, go to the message browser, see what went through, then go click to the rule log, look there. Is there an opportunity to make that process more efficient? And so we took a look and said, well, our customers are generally very happy with the way the test transformation tool works in our data transformation editor. Why don't we take that approach for testing routing rules? And so as you'll see in the next demonstration here, we did just that. And what we have now, when we go to the rule editor, this is what we're used to. Yes, it's visual and intuitive and makes it very easy, in a low-code environment to write out the routing rules. Well, now there's a new tab called the Test tab. It wasn't there before. And if I pop over to that, just like the test transformation tool, we give you ways to load up test data, whether it's input through the browser or you could go to an existing message in the engine. But at the end of the day, much like the data transformation tool, now I can come through and iterate through my use cases. If a message gets routed one way when it's an outpatient in PV12 and another way when it's inpatient in PV12, I don't have to keep going back and running messages through. I can come right here and make those changes. say OK, and then when we run the test, we get instant feedback, okay? No more running messages through end to end to get the info I'm looking for. We show you the parsed message. We show you which sends occurred. We then lay out the more detailed logging for the rule. The orange triangle says rule 1 didn't pass. Rule 3 didn't pass. Green indicates rule 2 and 4 did. So I'm getting that instant feedback. And then, of course, without leaving the page, I can just toggle from tab to tab to compare the rule. And then when it's time to run a new test, I can simply come back and go ahead and do that without having to continually run files through at, say, the operating system level or using a TCP sender or something like that. So I think that's going to be a well-received improvement in terms of productivity increase. And the hits keep coming here. For those that use record maps, same idea. Some of our clients make heavy utilization of record maps, especially those that work in the health plan space, deal with flat files, 99 or 200 columns or whatever it may be. And just like anything else, we want to test the transformation logic. Well, when you do 100 or 500 of these types of interfaces, you might get a little weary of having to go run the message through, let it get consumed, go to the message browser, find the XML for a record you're looking for, then copy the XML, go to the data transformation window, and paste that in. And so we recognized room for improvement there. And once again, the future is now. When I go back to the data transformation editor here and I open up a flat file transformation that I have, what you'll see here is it's aware of the record map schema. It knows if it's comma separated. It knows if it's fixed width. It knows if it's tab delimited, and you can go right out to your test file, paste in this case, the tab delimited record, and get the instant feedback on whether or not your transformation worked. And again, if you have conditional logic based on whether it's Memorial Drive or Memorial Ave, in my silly example, you can go ahead and get an XML error when you test that. So obviously, that was a bit off script, but nonetheless, the idea, we'll figure out what I did wrong there, but I'm willing to bet that was user error. So, moving on, and I think that sums up that. Few more features. As I mentioned earlier, especially for the large sites with distributed teams where we have a server team, an interface team, a network team, folks that may be in different parts of the country, we really continue to want to make the product more secure while allowing people to get their day-to-day jobs done. So oftentimes when we're supporting an interface, one of the things we want to do is if I'm in a test environment or even in prod, I may have need to go grab a batch of messages for whatever reason, for testing purposes or for troubleshooting purposes, which I guess are testing purposes, sharing information with my colleagues. And so in prior versions of Health Connect, what this typically would entail, and granted we did think this was a nice security benefit, but what you'd have to do is add an operation to your production that goes to a file on the server, select the messages you want to resend, go through the resend wizard, point them at that new target, and hit go. And yes, that was secure, maybe a little too secure, because for some of our customers, they say, yeah, well, our interface analysts don't have access to get any files off of the server or put them on there. We need to do something better. Also, again, there's potential for error in that process. If I'm going through the resend tool to get these types of outputs and I forget to choose a new target, bad things could happen. And so what we've done now, actually in a number of areas, is we've moved this now out to the local client side. So if I come over now to the message viewer, and I go through my search criteria, and it does have a similar feel to the resend tool in terms of if you pick a search criteria that returns 10,000 messages, it will tell you, hey, do you want all 10,000, et cetera. But now if I go ahead and select messages and hit export, I can name the file, and when I say OK, it will export it right to my client, right to the browser, where I can go ahead and open up that file and do what I need to do. Of course, this is protected by the role and resource security model, so we can choose who gets to take advantage of this. With great power comes great responsibility sort of thing. It's all audited, so I will know if there's any concern that somebody may have taken PHI and done something not secure with it, we can go back and audit those events. But nonetheless, with those I's being dotted and T's being crossed, this is a huge productivity increase for those that have to do this. Now you don't have to call the server team, have them get the file, SFTP it over for you. We think this is going to be quite an improvement. Same idea for event log. Okay, I can come in, and if I want to filter down, and for whatever reason I need to maybe let management know, what are the errors that occurred in the last week on a given interface, I can come right here, and in this case, I have the option to export to the server or the browser. I can go ahead, give it a name, and it'll show up right in my browser downloads folder. Makes it very easy to share that information, and this shows up as a nice CSV that should be opening in Excel. I'm sure that'll open in like 2 minutes when I'm in the middle of something else. So that's how that goes. Anyways, the other thing, again, when we talk about there it is. Thank you, Microsoft. Right on time. In any event, another nice little feature here, opening data transformations from the business rule editor. Okay, again, this is another one for our long-standing customers. You're like, yes, thank you very much. When I am in here looking at an interface or building a new interface and say, okay, I see what transformation's going to do. Wonder what that transformation's doing. I'd click back out, go to build transformations. And oh, wait a second, I forgot the name because I used 5 packages. And now let me go back and remember again. And I say, well, we can do better than that. And so now if I go ahead and open up the selector, it brings me right to the data transformation. I'm like, oh, we even got an applause for that. Thank you. Yes, that's what we're going for. And again, all of these features will be available to all of you in the 2019.1 release. Believe it or not, we're really just getting warmed up. And I'm going to kind of move a little quicker. Some of these next features, interface maps. So if I have a need for management, hey, radiology sending us messages. I just need you to tell me anyone that could possibly be receiving them. Short and simple. Right now, an interface engineer could go into the production configuration screen, hit the router, and you'd see the lines that get drawn. And, okay, that's great, but what if we want to offload that task to non-technical users without giving them, the potential to change a setting on an interface or something like that? Well, what interface routes allow you to do is provide that functionality, again, in a very secure fashion. And as you see here, what we really do, there's more than one way to use this, but a common thing would be to use the left to filter down by an input. And then on the right-hand side, the far right, is a column showing all the possible destinations. In the middle, we show you the transform and the routing rule that may be being invoked. And so what we're able to do, especially when I got 800 interfaces in a namespace, makes it very easy to find the information you're looking for, continually drill down, and then we should even be able to export this stuff out in a nice, friendly UI. So again, answering those questions now can be done by non-technical users without any risk of them changing a setting or disabling a component or something like that. All right, as we keep them moving. I know this is a lot, but that's what we're going for. We really wanted to show significant improvement. This is another one that's near and dear to me, the port settings interface. Essentially, and again, for the larger clients, the Ascension, I don't know if anybody from HHC is here, or Tenet, or clients like that, where you're supporting multiple hospitals on one instance of Ensemble, or Health Connect, or Iris for Health. One of the things that we love about the product is the ability to use namespaces. Makes it very easy to segment interfaces and protect them from disk to display. So from a security standpoint, the folks that may support the Milwaukee interfaces for Ascension may not have any access to see the Austin, Texas interfaces. And namespaces give us a nice way to do that and get that security and get that isolation and get that multi-tenancy. Well, what we realize, and especially when you got 10 or 20 or 150 namespaces, there's a couple what should be simple questions that become difficult to answer, such as, which interface is using port 55,000 right now? Or, geez, I have 5 new interfaces I need to build. What's the next port I should allocate? with the reason being that information was scattered across 10 or 20 or 100 namespaces, okay? And so we saw that need, and what we decided to do was build an enterprise-scale dashboard, and I built the prototype for this, and I thought I was quite clever by naming it the Port Authority. Not bad, but, you know, I guess, you know, not everybody has my sense of humor. So that name kind of went out by the wayside, and we are calling it Port Settings, but nonetheless, the functionality remains, which is quite straightforward. The filtering, who's using this port, what are the next ports available for me. We're going to have a port reservation system. When you got 10 or 100 interface analysts that don't all work in the same office, we don't want collisions, okay? If Tim's working on a set of interfaces that he knows are going live in 3 months, and it's already decided with that vendor that we're going to use port 9000 through 9010, we can go ahead and reserve them and make sure you know, that everybody has visibility to that. Then when the interface gets deployed, we mark it from a status of reserved to deployed. You know, really creating a well-oiled machine. And obviously, this is very useful even before we start building interfaces, but even more so when the network team calls up and says, boy, we're seeing a lot of traffic on port 9212. What's going on there? You can get right to the source. Quite a few more in the works for the 2019.1 release. Some of these are near completion, others not so much, but I do have a habit of rambling on, so I thought by putting them all on one screen, it would speed me up a bit. But let's just rip through them here. Many of you are aware that in Studio, there's a Find in Files feature. So if I have to do something like, hey, I need to know right away what are all the data transformations that touch my custom HL7 schema. We can go into Studio, and we can do those searches and get an output. And that's great. But again, a big push for us is to move as much into the browser as we can, both for security and efficiency and training reasons. All of these things become easier when it's web-based. So that Find in Files functionality will be moved into the management portal. Source control hooks for HL7 schemas. We've had them for data transformations and routing rules, which arguably are the most important things for source and version control in an interface engine. But now, we're adding it for HL7 schemas as well from the management portal. For those who use the business process tools and drive data transformations from there, you're well aware that when you pass context variables from a BPL to a data transformation, it makes it difficult to test. We've gone ahead and improved that. Data transformations now give you the ability to input context variable values right in the testing iteration, which is a nice productivity increase. I've mentioned earlier, we're moving a lot of the export stuff to the browser. That also includes the deployment functionality. So now on my local laptop, I can export out a group of interface code. Prior to this enhancement, we could only export it out to the server. If I need to send the WRC some sample code, or I need to send Steve a data transformation I've been working on, it's a lot easier for me to be able to download it to my local laptop. And again, you know, there's a theme. These enhancements are big and small. Some of them are big splash enhancements like a visual HL7 schema editor. Others could shave off 30 seconds here, 4 minutes there. It all adds up. When you got 8,800 or even 800 interfaces, you got to convert. System default settings, there actually were good reasons why they weren't being utilized by the add host wizards, but now they are. So if I click plus to add a message router, it will pick up the system default settings. Session ID link, so again, if I highlight a component in the production configuration screen and I see the messages on the right, if I just want to look at the newest messages trace, we've added the session ID as a hyperlink right there, so you can click on that. And then another one, which I'm pretty fond of, is it's always, to me, been very nice that when I add an HL7 service, it automatically creates the router and the routing rule for me. But a pet peeve of mine was that it predefines the package name. And so what we're now doing is on a namespace by namespace level, we'll be able to define a default package prefix, which once again reduces the chance of human error, makes it more efficient and faster. You know, we're really fine-tooth combing the product and looking for these opportunities. So in a little bit, I'm going to transition to what the future is. Most, if not all of this, will be available in Iris for Health, Iris, and Health Connect 2019.1. In a second, I'm going to transition to what we're looking at beyond that. But nonetheless, my esteemed guest, Steve, I'd like to invite him back up and talk about some real-world feedback for how these alpha features are being received.
Well, thanks, Randy. So, you know, first of all, I mean, I wish we could take credit for every one of those things. In some cases, we planted the seed in, you know, in Randy and his team. A lot of the times, we just kind of watered what you guys have already planted there, and his team, you know, turned it into something actually usable for us. So the way we've been able to use those, we've found a lot of productivity gains. I hope that you guys do too. I mean, that working together, that's how we get some of these things implemented, get them into the product, get our development teams starting to use them. We'll find some more, and we'll just keep improving the product with Randy and his team's help. So thank you guys for helping us. I hope that you see some productivity, some things that you can actually use on a day-to-day basis. Now, Randy told me I needed to pick out a few of those things. Really hard, right? So a lot of those things we use repeatedly all day long, every day. But I'll pick on some things in general, if that's okay. So our team was scattered across the country, supporting a lot of different platforms. To get this project really rolling, we had to pick some people from different places, bring them all together, get them onto a new application they've never seen before. A lot of times they knew HL7. I'll pick on one of our developers here in the front row. So she was the business analyst, right? She knew HL7. She knew what was supposed to happen, when and where, and things to that, but she hadn't done any development. With the InterSystems product, we were able to you know, give her a little bit of training, a little bit of hands-on things. She go work on her own. A lot of these productivity things that Randy showed you, the enhancements, made all that easier, right? When I first started to try to build a message schema, it took me an hour. I fiddled with those tildes and brackets and braces and did it 20 different ways before I could get it right. I mean, now it's a drag and drop. That's what I was kind of used to with some other products. That's really the way we need this to go, right? So it helped me on a personal basis. So I was a little. That's one of the things that we had to have, right? And some of those other things, just I'm real picky about who gets on and off of our servers. That was another reason for a lot of the download things out to the browsers now. Our goal is to not have anybody other than our system admins actually have OS level access to anything. There's really no reason for it, right? The product is there. They have it on their things. Let's get the right tools in the right hands, get them to the right data. Makes my system admins happy. They don't have to deal with 30 or 40 different developers always asking to have this file placed there and there. And they're able to get that data on over to their customers too, right? So some of the message search downloads and things, a lot of times we need to hand that back off to our business analysts. Much easier now. We get them, get their feedback, and get right back to the development and to take the next step. So I don't want to take too much time because I know he's got some more stuff he wants to go over to. But if you guys want to talk after, I mean, we'll be around. Definitely look for these to come out in the next release. I hope they're do for you guys what they've done for us.
Thank you so much, Steve. I certainly appreciate it and share that thought. For those out there, the Ascension folks are itching to meet the rest of the Health Connect community. So if you guys would like to come introduce yourselves to Tim and Sammy and Steve and others, they'd be happy to meet with you. But while we're on that topic, I was quite fortunate on our side to work with a very talented development team. And so if you do have questions for the InterSystems folks, if you could just raise your hands. Jamie Newton is here. James McKeith is in the back. Kim Santos. And I hope Craig Lee is in here somewhere. Did we get Craig? Maybe not. But in any event, I would like to personally thank that foursome for the excellent work they've done. We've met our deadlines in getting this stuff rolled out. And if you have questions for the InterSystems side, I'd be happy to meet with you. But also, the core development team here has just done an outstanding job rolling this stuff out. And I'm sure they'd be thrilled to discuss it with you as well. And so, as Steve mentioned, and as I look at the clock, and for those of you who know me, Scott, for instance, can vouch for this wherever he is, I'm actually on target to finish on time here, which is amazing in and of itself. But I did, I believe, save something really interesting for the end, which is, yes, everything we've showed you benefits the productivity of the interface analyst. And that's all great, and most of, if not all of it, is on target to be in your hands in a matter of months, which is great. What are we working on after that? Well, interface conversion automation, okay? This is an idea that has been out there for quite a while, and, it has its naysayers and it has its proponents. We've decided to go ahead and bite the bullet and invest in automating the conversion process. Now, this will benefit new clients. As Steve mentioned, they have quite a few interfaces to convert over to Health Connect, but for our existing customers, especially the ones that work for large health systems that may be in acquisition mode, you guys know this. I got 12 hospitals for 2 years. I got all those interfaces. 2 years and 1 day go by, we just acquired a new hospital. And they use Interface Engine X, and they've got 100 interfaces that we now got to convert over to our engine. Okay, this is the way the healthcare world works now. So what we're looking to do is take yet another huge gain in productivity. And just briefly, and for those of you out here who know me, you've seen this slide before. In the kickoff process, just to review for you, how do we know that an interface is converted to production grade quality? Well, there are many different ways clients can assure their customer base of that. But one that we find works more often than not is you go get 30 days or 14 days or 90 days of historical data from the legacy engine. You get the input and the output from the legacy engine, and then you run the input through Health Connect, and you continually tweak the interface until the output from Health Connect is a to the ASCII character match to the output from the prior engine. And basically, especially when you do this with 30 or 60 or 90 days of data, they're talking many millions of messages potentially that get validated in this process. And it's a great way to go back to management and say, hey, look, when we flip this interface over, there's not going to be one difference. Rest assured of that. Now, I was going to take it off because it's not really relevant to the slide today, but those of you who know me know I love simple catchphrases that rhyme. When in doubt, build to the output. Almost rhymed, so I stick with it. But essentially, the point there, in case you're wondering what's that doing on the slide, as part of this conversion process, and we go through this with every customer, this interface hasn't been touched in 10 years. Surely they didn't mean to copy from field X to field Y. That doesn't make any sense. Why would anybody do that? And just over the years, the clients have asked, as we convert to Health Connect, is now the time to fix that? And what I say is no, because no good deed goes unpunished. When you do that, you open yourself up to, well, now we got to do a new level of user testing that we wouldn't otherwise have to do when we're doing just file comparisons. But then I think even more alarmingly is all of a sudden, John from the lab says, oh, well, wait a second. That's not the only thing that's wrong with the interface. While I got you, here's 15 more things I'd like you to do. And in any event, that can very much derail the turnaround time of an interface conversion. So that is coaching that we do provide. We say keep an enhancement log for after the interfaces are converted, then you can go back. And I think using things like the comment action and data transform gives you a great place to flag where those questionable code segments are. And then using our new Find in Files feature, when you're converted, you can say, okay, show me the 14 transforms or the 400 where we flag something for review later. But in any event, taking it back up a higher level, the process entails difference, comparison testing of the output from the old engine to the new. And so what we're investing heavily now is how much of that process can we automate. And so what we'll be looking at in the release beyond 2019.1, could be 2019.2 or 2020, depending on how that rolls out, is what we're calling the Interface Productivity Toolkit, which is going to be a set of tools starting with a production generator, and then general migration tools, a message analyzer, and a verification tool. So the first thing, and this is more or less ready now, but the idea is pretty simple. Hey, look, I'm using a legacy engine. I'm able in that legacy engine to spit out an Excel, or I can create an Excel that has all my inputs, all my outputs, all the ports that are in use. Can I just load all that up in Excel, hit a button, and have it auto-generate a production for me? And so we now have that tool delivered. It is in Ascension's hands, and they're testing that out, and it's relatively straightforward. And that was certainly the easiest of these things to get together. But basically, as you expect, you can now fill out an Excel with 100 or 1,000 rows, hit import, and now my entire set of services, routers, and operations are there for me. Now, once that's in place, we start looking at the migration tool and message analyzer. And essentially, for those that have been paying attention, artificial intelligence is really taking off within the InterSystems Corporation. I'm not sure if this qualifies as true AI or not, but it's pretty close, or about as close as you get for an interface analyst anyways. The idea is, okay, well, Sammy does this every day. She takes input, output. Actually, many of you do this. How much of that, and I love my catchphrases, let the robot do it. Those of you who know me have heard that before. How much of this can we train a robot to do? And so essentially, up in the top left, we're developing tools. These are well underway. We've been working on them for many months now, where we basically can drop in inbound and outbound messages. We have a command line interface right now, will likely be exposed out through the web, where we essentially hit go, and then what this tool will do, the thing that's nearest to ready is it starts by schema definition for you. So it will go through, look at your segments, look at your Z segments, look at what was supposed to be required and wasn't there, look at what you've added and assume it's optional, and it will create the HL7 schema for you, which then you can use our nice, shiny new visual editor to maintain for the long term. And that's great, and that's well underway. I've seen the prototype, and it's coming right along. That will be delivered first. And then, again, work that's well underway is, okay, well, if we can do that, how much of the real meat of the interface can we auto-convert? And that, by meat of the interface, I mean your conditional routing logic and your data transformation logic. And so we are basically looking or continuing to build that stuff out. And essentially, this will be an iterative process with, release cycles that you expect. But what we're also going to do is then provide the analysis for you, where when we run the input, run the output, auto-generate an interface, run it through, okay, let's see how close we are. For the certain interfaces, maybe we match 100% input to output. Obviously, a pass-through interface would be a great candidate for that, but that's a little too easy. But then basically what we're looking to do is flag for you, okay, we were able to automatically detect and pick up, say, 85% of the interface logic. But here on a web page, the IN1 segment, the robot couldn't quite figure out what you did there. But at least we zero you in on that. And, the very straightforward mappings on the MSH segment are done for you. That sort of thing. And, we firmly believe that this technology is going to see the light of day soon enough. And as soon as clients start using it and giving us feedback, that's going to be our opportunity to train the robot to get that much better. And again, when you're doing this for 8 interfaces, not a big deal. 800 or 8,000 of them, these tools can be quite significant. So with that, obviously a lot of this stuff is coming in 2019. When it's available, we'll have our usual suspects in terms of educational materials for you. Online learning, it'll all be worked into our classroom training, et cetera. And then by mandate and law of Global Summit, I must remind you all to complete the survey. And these slides, I believe, are already up on the website. But like I said, the Ascension folks would love to meet you. The development team, myself, we'd love to talk to you. And with that, unbelievably, I actually have time for some Q&A. So, any questions? Yeah, come on up. Sure.
With the port settings, is that going to look at like the OS ports too, or is that just looking at?
Yep, great question. So what it is designed to do is look across instances on a server. So not looking at the OS, but for instance, especially with the very large sites, we may actually want to have multiple instances on the same server so that we can multi-thread the journal daemon in a mirroring situation.
Right.
It will look across instances. So it won't necessarily do what a netstat would do for you in terms of everything going on the box, but what it will do is, you know, make it very efficient to find what is being in use. And then I guess by exclusion principles, if it's not in the port settings interface, then it must be something outside of the engine that's using it.
Something to think about. Maybe, I don't know if this is possible, but put something in maybe that you could reserve those ports on that list. Because right now, we work off of spreadsheet.
Yep.
And we have like, okay, you're not allowed to use these ports, not allowed to use these ports, not allowed to use these ports.
Yep, so good news, reservation is part of it.
Okay.
So port reservation is part of the deliverable.
Okay.
And you know, so that is there, but if it's something completely outside of the engine, you know, if you use some other application on that server that uses ports, that sort of thing we wouldn't necessarily be able to detect.
Right, I'm just thinking
Although
about.
I suppose you could reserve them and just never unreserve them.
I'm just
so I
thinking
already
like-
got a workaround for you.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about like standard AIX ports. And,
Yeah, good call.
all right, thanks.
Yeah, I think with reservation, that would get you there. So thank you for the question. Other questions? Yes, okay. So the question is different retention policies for messages that come from different sources. What I would say is we, through the WRC, have been giving out a sample script for that sort of thing for many years. So we could help you today with that, albeit not necessarily an off-the-shelf feature of the product. We'd certainly be willing to take a closer look at that and see if some of that can be moved in. But at least I can tell you today, and I believe it's on our developer community as well, we absolutely could help you do that today. Yes? Sure, so I would say, yeah, the interface maps is the start of that. And right now, the way it's designed, it looks at on the service level, on the component level. But, you know, that's a very good request there. I suppose, I want to know, maybe Kim and I could take a look at that. Maybe through some sort of filtering or looking at the routing rules, we'll be able to take it a step further. So in other words, many, and you all know, some of our interfaces take in multiple types, ADT, ORM, ORU. That's a good idea. I don't think the interface maps does that yet, but that's probably something we could look at. Yep. Yes. Okay, maybe we could talk offline about that. I'm not aware that the SVG portal would do that, but I certainly believe you. So maybe we could take a look at that. Okay. Yeah, we'll take a look. I'd be surprised if we removed that. But in any event, let's follow up on that. Yes?
I got another question.
Okay.
I like what you did with the groups, the sequencing that you're doing inside the DTL. Maybe, is there any way we can do that future enhancement-wise for if statements, like you do? Like if you look at the code in the studio, you can actually collapse the if statements.
Yep.
It would be nice to see that in the DTL editor too.
Yeah, I think we're getting there. Let's take a quick look. Because if I go back to my other transform, so in here I do have, and by the way, we also, along that train of thought, the case statements, I'm not sure I highlighted that, but now with an if, we do have the ability to collapse and expand them. Yep, you're welcome. Yep, I believe, yep. So the left and right arrows should be able to do that for you. So like if I wanted to move this in or out of the for loop, these left and right, have you tried the left and right arrows yet? Okay, so maybe, again, offline we could take a look, because I believe that's their intention, is to be able to take an if and move it in or out of a for loop, but I could be missing something there. Yes?
Yeah, for upgrade, we're still running on 2016, so should we just skip 2018 and go to 2019?
Probably, my answer would be have a discussion with your sales engineer, who probably knows more about your account than I do. With that being said, historically, we definitely allow skipping versions in an upgrade, and usually the advice I give my clients is very straightforward. Look at the new features. If you need some of those new features, like the year DICOM was introduced, that was a slam dunk reason to upgrade. If any of the new features don't make an immediate impact, it's still a good idea to upgrade, but there can be other considerations, like business considerations or SLAs that you want to meet that may say, you know what, why don't we skip a version, wait until next year comes out. I will say with all that, in my 10 years at InterSystems, this is quite a surge of improvement in the interface engine. So if I were, on 2016 and I didn't have an urgent reason to upgrade to 2018, I would factor in that there is a slew of improvements coming in 2019 and definitely factor that into the decision. There's other considerations with it being an Iris-based kit that you want to make sure you talk with your sales engineer in more detail, but at a high level, because we allow skipping version upgrades, I would factor just the sheer number of improvements into my decision. Yep, yes? Yes. Yep. Yeah, that's a good idea. We've looked at being able to do that by category or something like that. So I will say that request has come through. I don't believe we've acted on it yet, but certainly, let your sales engineer know that that's of interest to you so that we, can get another vote for it sort of thing. If it's an urgent need, talk to your sales engineer, and again, we can do it, just is it an off-the-shelf feature or something that we get through a script of the WRC or the developer community or something like that. Yeah. Yeah, and like I said, we've kicked it around. The category feature seems like it could be useful there, but then everybody's got to use the category feature the right way. No, what I mean is to be able to disable a category. Yeah. So choose a category and hit disable once, and all of those items get disabled. That's how we think, or at least how I've been thinking about it. But not there yet, but perhaps, it'll get there soon enough. Any other questions? Yes? Just an XML tag on either side. Open group and closed group down at the end of it. Yep. Yes? Any improvements to documentation? Well, I'll say all of these new features are documented. That's a great question. Unfortunately, it's a little out of my wheelhouse. I can put you in touch with our learning services group. I have no doubt, Oh, the interface documentation. I would say comment actions in DTL and in routing rules are a big step forward for inline documentation. That's what we have in the next release. Yep, yes.
Randy?
Okay. Oh, sorry, if we could take the rest of these questions outside, because the wrap it up music has began. Thank you, everybody, and thank you, Steve.